Right. Happy post Yom Kippur. Hope everyone had a beautiful and meaningful Yantif. And please God, it should continue into the year, a beautiful, healthy, healing and healthy year.
Amen.
We're on the bottom of Mem Testament Beis. We learned a Mishnah about whether or not someone who says a tree far away, if he were to say, Shvisasi tachtov, I want to be under that tree. So the Gemara says, Lo amar klum, it's as if you accomplished nothing. Yet if you were to say, I want to be by the trunk of that tree, then you're good to go. So now the Gemara is going to open in analyzing that first part of the Mishnah. If you just scan up at the Mishnah on the toward the top of Mem Testament Beis, the opening line, he was walking, it was getting dark, and he saw a tree, and he said, Shvisasi tachtav, I want to be under that tree. The halacha is lo amar klum, nothing. So let's go to the Gemara now and analyze that. My lo amar klum. What does it mean when it says lo amar klum? What's the scope and parameters here? So that is a machlokes in the Amoraim. Says the Gemara, answer number one, amar Rav, lo amar klum kol ikar. That tree is totally off limits. Te'afilu l'sachtav shel ilan l'matzi azim. You're not even allowed to walk under that. You're totally restricted from that tree. Ushmuel Amar, no. Lo Amar Klum, when the Mishnah says Lo Amar Klum, that's Lebeso. That means you can't get all the way to your house, because remember we said you're 2,000 from the tree, and the tree is 2,000 from your house. So that's what Shmuel says, you just can't get home. You are allowed to go to that tree. However, what was the restriction of the Mishnah? The restriction of the Mishnah was V'naseh sachtav shel ilan chamar gamal. But that area under the tree is a chamar gamal. This is our third time I think we've had this phrase. The donkey and the camel, one leads and one pulls. Right, so you have the animals pulling you in opposite directions. Basically, it's an area of suffix. And how would it play out in a suffix? It would play out in a suffix as follows: Balimdod bin hatzafon. If you wanted to go to the north, then modid in lomina darom. Then we follow from the back side of that tree that you're at. We don't give you the edge of that space. So let's say that my Gemara is under the tree here. So I'm standing on the north side here, and I want to walk this way. So the Chamar Gamal aspect, the suffix aspect of the Mishnah, according to Shmuel, is that you don't measure from here, but you start your measuring from the back side of that tree. However many amos that is, you lose that in your distance, and maybe you can't get home because of that, possibly. So and then of course the reverse is also true. Last line of Mem Testament Beis. And if you wanted to go south, then we say, no, you cannot go to the south. You have to measure from the north end because this area is a degree of suffix. Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. What does lo amar klum mean? Is it categorical or no? It just depends on which space you're talking about. Again, Rav is more categorical. That tree is totally off limits. And Shmuel says it's not off limits. You just lose the amos of that tree in your measurements to get back to your house. Top of Daf Nun Amud Aleph. Let's analyze the Shita of Rav. Amar Rava, my time of the Rav. Why does Rav say that it's lo amar klum kol ekar, that you can't be under that tree at all? Because, says the Gemara, when you were standing there and you looked at that tree from 2,000 amos out, 1990, just a little bit less than 2,000, you're like, I recognize that tree. That's the tree that I etched my name into when I was a kid. There, says the Gemara, Mishum de lo Messiah Asrei. Because under that tree, you were not really Messiah Asrei. That's the language of our Mishnah, that you just want to be under the tree. But what if the branch span of the tree is 100 feet? So we don't know which Daled Amos is yours. That's what the Gemara is saying. That's what Rav is explaining in the name of Rav, is that Mishum de lo Messiah Asrei, there's no makom there. We don't know where you are. And that's why when the Mishnah continues to, I want to be near the trunk of the tree, now we know where you want to be. But if you say, I want to be under the tree, it's kind of like loose-lipped a little bit. It doesn't work. That's answer number one. V'ikad amri, second line, Nun Amud Aleph, second line, V'ikad amri. Some say, Amar Rabbi, my time of the Rav, what's the reason why Rav says, Lo Amar Klum Kol Ikar, that when we say, I want to be under that tree, you can't be under that tree at all, because Mishum to Kasavar, because he holds of an area really not directly from here, but it applies here. Anything that will not work in sequence, you cannot do both of them together. What does that mean over here? It means that if I wanted to say okay, so like the Daled Amos over there, yeah, but then like the one next to it also, and then the one close to the tree. Like I'll decide when I get there, basically. Every Daled Amos that I want, I can have. So that doesn't work. And when that doesn't work, then you can't do it in one moment. You can't say the whole tree works for me, because we still don't know which Daled Amos you want. So it says the Gemara, my Beinaihu, what's the difference between these two versions of Rava within Rav? Remember, we're only analyzing Rav right now, who says that Lo Amar Klum Kol Ikar, you can't be under the tree at all. Answer number one is because we don't know where you want to be. Answer number two is because I can't sequentially choose my Daled Amos. That doesn't make the problem any better. I still don't know where you want to be. Therefore, I can't say that I want to be under the tree now. My beinayu, what's the difference between them? Ika beinayu da'amar liknu li be'arba amos migo shmona. Let me pick 4 amos out of the 8, assuming that there are at least 8. We'll see that this number is quite specifically 8 at least. What happens if you pick a specific 4 amos? Manda amar mishum de lo mesayim asrei, halo mesayim asrei. According to version 1 of Rabbi, who says that you haven't chosen your spot. Well, if the tree is 8 amos and you pick dalet amos to the right, then by definition you didn't pick dalet amos to the left, which means we don't know which space you need. And therefore, that shita would say that even if you identify the 4 amos, because there's more than 1 4 amos there, you say, I want to take any 4 amos. That doesn't work when there's 8 amos. And uman de amar, and according to the shita that says, mishum kol she'ena b'zeh afilu b'vasachas eino, according to the one who says that because I can't say that I want dalet amos number 1 over dalet amos number 2, so therefore I can't say I want to be under that tree. But here I did choose a very specific dalet amos, and for him that would work. That's what he said. I want the 4 amos that are from the edge of the tree. You can give an XY axis of the ground, whatever you want, grid, whatever, and that would work for the second sheet. This just doesn't work for the first one, because you can't really specify those dalet amos unless, of course, you're anchored to the tree itself. Now, the Gemara is going to take a tangent here to analyze this halachic approach that we took in version 2 of Rabbah, namely, kol she'ena b'zeh afilu b'vas achas eino, and that brings us to Gufa, about 10 lines down, a third of the way down, Daf Nun, Amud Aleph, Gufa. Amar Rabbah kol davar she'ena b'zeh afilu b'vas achas eino, as we pointed out already, that if you can't do something in sequence, then you can't do them both at once. And the Gemara is now going to ask on this 3 separate questions. Question number 1, Eisivei Abai l'Rabbah. Abai asks Rabbi, remember Rabbi is the Baal Shita here, Hamar bebe maisros. Let's say that I want to give more than 10% meiser. So what's the din? I say I want to give 20% meiser. So how does that work for the Kohen? Because meiser is only 10%. If I give 12%, that isn't the other stuff tevel. Because I'm giving him from the pile of the untithed. I'm giving him from the tevel, but I'm giving him more. So how does everything play out? So it says the Gemara, and this is quoting a Tosefta in Demai. So it says the Gemara, Hamar bebe maisra, someone who exceeds 10%, Peirosav mesukin, that which you took from is great. Let's say you gave 20%, the 80% are wonderful. They're no longer tevel, they're mutter to eat. However, umaisrosav mikul kalin. But the meiser that you gave the Kohen is mikul kal. That doesn't work. Because now, as Rashi highlights, now the Kohen has his meiser with a mixture of tevel in it that hasn't been untithed, because you took it away from that which was tithed. So now you're stuck. The Kohen's holding a mixed bag of meiser and tevel. So it says the Gemara, I don't understand. Hamar ben meiser, why would that work? Amai, why does that work? Lema, we should have argued, kol she'ena b'zeh afilu b'vas achas eino. We should not even have a case where it's possible to give extra meiser. Why? Because what if I tried to give 10% to the Kohen and give another 10% to the Kohen? Is that second 10% actually meiser? No way. No way, it's chulin. You're done already. The Kohen can check out. He's gone already. So what do you do with that second 10%? So it says the Gemara. What do we see from here? We see that you're not allowed to do them sequentially. I'm going to give you the Kohen 10% now, and in 5 minutes I'm going to give you another 10%. That doesn't work, right? But here you can give 20%. Why? We should have said the same rule that we just said over here, which is anything you can't do sequentially, you can't do b'vas achas. So that's the Gemara's question. Amai, lema kol she'enu b'zeh zeh. Since I can't give meiser sequentially and have that second meiser be a meiser, then why here in this Mishnah did it say I could be marbe b'meisros? That should be impossible halachically. Afilu b'vas achas einu, then it shouldn't have worked in our Mishnah. Answers the Gemara. Shiny meiser de'isei l'chatzayin. Meiser has a unique aspect to it, which other worlds of halacha don't have, which is that you can give halves, even of one stalk, even of one grain. The Amar tikdosh palga dechitza. I only want to be makdish, half of a piece of wheat. Then kitcha, then it works. So therefore, that has a totally different din, and therefore the halachos are entirely different when it comes to this world of meiser, and therefore we cannot apply this principle of kol davar she'ena b'zeh zeh afilu b'vas achas eino. So on the heels of that, the Gemara says, fine, I understand. You've got an answer. There's something that's mechudash about the world of meiser, which is that any one piece can be broken into half alts kedusha. Understood. Halfway down, but it says the Gemara of Amar meiser v'harei meiser behema deleise lechatzayin. What about meiser behema? Just as some background, we know that when we count meiser behema, unlike fruit, where we take 10% and we move it off to the side, When it comes to animals, we have to bring them through an opening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give them a little stamp. And then we know what the meiser is. So it's done differently, right? So it says the Gemara like this. What are you going to do? You're going to take a half of one animal? We're not cutting animals in half right now. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rabba, Yatsu Shnayim be'asiri, Ukiran asiri, asiri ve'echad, asiri ve'achanasar me'uravin zebozeh. If the 10th and 11th come out together, then they both have Kedusha. Why do they have Kedusha? It's the same rule. Bezeh Charzeh wouldn't work. Let's say the 10th one comes out and I say, it's Kodesh. And then the 11th one comes out. I'm like, it's also Kodesh. No, the 11th one is number 1 of the next 10. You can't do that. So says the Gemara, why here are the 10th and 11th animals both Kedusha? That doesn't make sense. It's Zeh Achar Zeh. That doesn't make sense. Why there are you saying it's Kedusha? We have a rule that Zeh Achar Zeh, if it doesn't work there, then you can't do it b'vas achas. Says the Gemara, Shiny Meiser Behema. Meiser Behema also has a chiddush to it, which is to isei b'zeh achar zeh b'taus. Granted, I'm maskim that when it comes to the world of lechatchila, of how do we ideally and properly set up Meiser, we do not do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 and 11 walk out together and we say Kodesh. It's true. Normally we don't do that. But there's a special din in regards to Meiser Behema that when it was done b'taus, yes. You can't do it lechatchila. That's not allowed. But if it's done b'taus, it's allowed. How do we know this? A Mishnah. The Mishnah writes, it's not 15 lines from the bottom, 2/3 of the way down. Kara latishi l'chi asiri. If you accidentally call the 9th animal the 10th, namely you thought it was Meiser, ule asiri tishi, you count backwards, right? You just counted a little off. Ule achadasar asiri shloshtan mikudashin. All 3 of them are Kodesh. What do we see here? It's clearly an error in your counting. Got to go back to the basics. But with your mistake, it seems to be the din is that it's Mekudash. Now, you can't do it lechatchila, but you can do it b'di'evet. So therefore, because we see that the ta'us, we allow for there to be a ta'us where we say that 3 things are Mekudash. Therefore, you cannot apply your din of kol she'enu b'zeh achar zeh that you also cannot do b'vas achas. Okay, now says the Gemara, let's jump to still another way. Fine. The Hare Toda, in regards to the korbanos, a Toda, where the korban Toda, where it's really 40 loaves of bread, where they were brought. So there, delay se betos, there we don't have what we had by the animals, which is that if it was done betos, that it would have kedusha, and also delay se bezeh achar zeh, we also shouldn't have one after the other, itmar. Yet what do we see? There was a machlokas amoraim about the following case: Toda shenishchata al shmonim chalos. There was a korban Toda, and there were 80 chalos. So that's 2 sets of 40. There's really only supposed to be 40. There's 2 sets of 40. What happens? Is there Kedusha with 40, or is there not? Is there a status of the Lachmei Toda, yes or no, in regards to 40 of them? Machlokas in the Gemara, in the Amoraim, says the Gemara, Chizkiya Amar, Kitshu Allah, Mem Mitoch Shmonim. 40 of the 80 have, one of the 2 units is considered Kadosh. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo Kitchu Allah Mem Mitoch Shmonim. No, 0 are. And the Gemara's question is on the Shita of Chizkiya. How in the world did you manage that? It wouldn't work b'zeh achar zeh. How then could you have Kedusha with only half? If I were to say, 1 set of korbanos, here's 40 loaves of bread. 2nd set, here, and I'm going to bring another 40 loaves just for fun. That would not work. No one would ever say that that's Kedusha. So if it doesn't work b'zeh achar zeh Chizkiya, then how can you say over here that Mem Mitoch Shmonim are Kitchu? So says the Gemara, Ha'itmar Allah, and the Gemara has the wrong name here. It's not Rav Zera, it's Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Says the Gemara, Ha'itmar Allah, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Ha'kol Mod, and let me give you clarity on this machlokas between Chizkiya and Rav Yochanan. Everyone agrees, Heicha de Amar, Likteshu, Arba'im Mitoch Shmone de Kadshe. Everyone agrees, Chizkiya and Rav Yochanan. If you say from the beginning, the first 40 are going to be Kadosh, you're good to go. Everyone agrees that that's Mekudash. This is not a case of Zeh Achar Zeh. You're saying it's the first 40. And also, Lo Yikdeshu Arba'im, if you would have said out loud that I don't want any of them to become holy, then Elen Ken Kitchu Shmonim. What?
But then it's not a korban then.
Sorry.
Korban Toda.
This lechem will not be lachmei toda. You're correct. So that's what the Gemara is agreeing to. They're saying, if you would have said, none of this bread is going to be holy, says the Gemara, So none of this bread is going to be holy unless all 80 are holy, which is not possible.
Right.
Says the Gemara, Kulei alma lo pligi de lo kitchu. Everyone agrees to that too. What were Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan arguing about? Ki pligi bistama, where you didn't say anything. All that happened was as the case presented above, which is Toda shenishchata al shmonim chalos. There were 80 loaves of bread. No one gave any qualifications. Not first 40 and not none of the 80. We don't know what happened. So what's that? There we have our machlokas. Mar savar, last line. Mar savar lachrayus kamechaven v'altnai isnaihu. It must be that he had intent for at least 40 of them to become the lachmei toda, and that would be the shita of Chizkiah. Umar savar, top of daf nun, amud beis. Umar savar lekorban gadol kamechaven. Not correct, says Rashi. V'halo efshar ve'arbain minayhu lo amrinan delakacho aval gabe shvisa. This is connecting back to our sugya. Umar savar, back in the Gemara. Umar savar lekorban gadol kamechaven. He thought he was having a big korban, and we needed 80 lachmei toda, which is not the way things work. So therefore, nothing is mekudash. And therefore, the machlokas is really unrelated to ours, and that's how we get out of this problem. And then we are going to now circle back to the actual machlokas of Rav and Shmuel, really going back to the fundamentals of our Mishnah. How big is this tree? What was the branch? Like I would have said arm span, but what is the branch, the width of the diameter of the actual up and down of the tree? How far do the branches go out? So that we have to figure out, because we said that it was a case where if you say shvisasi tachtav, that it was a zero, lo amar klum. So let's see what the parameters are. Top line, nunam beis. Amar abaye lo shanu el be'ilan shetachtav yud beis amma. It must be that there's at least 12 amos under the tree. Aval be'ilan she'ein tachtav yud beis amma hare miktas beso nikar. Yud beis amma. So then you'd be fine. You'd be able to get home from there. Now, here's what's going on here. If we say that there is less than, let's assume that there's 11 amos, less than 12, there's 11 amos. So that's less than 3 sets of 4. So let's assume that we decide my shvisa is going to be, when I say shvisasi tachtav, that it's in the middle. So if you're in the middle, so there's 4 in the middle, and there was a total of 11, right? So what's left? We have 7 left, basically. So that means that there's 3.5 on each side, which means that if I pick the middle 4 amos of an 11 amos wide tree, then I'm in all 3 of the segments. I'm in the middle one for sure because I chose that one. I have half an amma in the right one and half an amma in the left one. So this is what Abaye qualifies in the Gemara, is that obviously the tree must be 12, because if it was 11, then it's at least theoretically possible that wherever I am is in all 3 of the areas. Says the Gemara, that's pashut not true. Because what if I pick the one all the way to the left? What if my Gemara is a tree and it's 11 amos, and I pick these 4 amos? Aren't the last 4 amos untouched? That's the Gemara's question. Maskif lo Rav Huna berei de Rav Yoshua. Mimai de be'arboy mitziasa kamesayim. What kind of assumption is that I'm picking exactly the 4 amos in the middle? Dilma be'arboy de haigisa u'be'arboy de haigisa kamesayim. I can theoretically argue it. You said not 12, it's 11. So if you're in the middle, you're mamish in the middle, 4. So then I'm a half an amma into the left, and I'm a half. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen. So why is under 12 okay with you? And in fact, the Gemara argues against this and therefore says as follows. 6 lines says the Gemara, Ela Amar Rabhuna Berei de Rabbi Yoshua Lo Shanu Ela Ve'ilan Shetachtav Ches Amos. The Mishnah's limitation when we said Shvisasi Tachtav is a 0 Lo Amar Klum, that's when the tree was 8 amos in diameter or greater. But if it's less, then any 4 amos you choose means by definition you'll be in the other 4 amos. Let's say it's only 7. I don't care where you put the 4 amos. You put it all the way to the left, 4 amos, there's only 3 left to the right, which means that you're 1 amma in to the section to the right. So that's how the Gemara answers this question and says that we must be dealing in our Mishnah with a tree that's 8 or wider in diameter. But if it was less, then you would be able to get home. That's not our Mishnah. Our Mishnah's limitation when it says Shvisasi Tachtav, that I see a tree, I recognize that tree, I want my Shvisa to be under that tree. So it says the Mishnah, that's a 0. Only if the tree is 8 or greater. Because if it's 7.9 and down, then no matter where I pick my Dalet Amos, I'm always going to be in both possible units of 4 amos, whatever they are, because they overlap a little bit. And that is how our Mishnah is understood. And in fact, going back to the very beginning of today's Gemara, Tanya Kavase de Rav, Tanya Kavase de Shmuel, there are brises to support each of the shitas. And if we just flip back and look at the bottom of Mem Tesam Beis, there we saw the shita of Rav, that Lo Amar Klum is Kol Iker, you cannot use the tree at all. We'll see a brisa to support that. And then we saw Shmuel, who said, no, you just can't get home, but you can get under the tree, although the tree is Chamar Gamal, that whenever you do the math, you have to deduct, the opposite. You have to add whatever the diameter is of the tree to your distance to get home. Okay, let's see what the brises are to support all of their opinions. We're the second of the widest lines now. Tanya Kavase de Rav. This is an eight-line brisa that supports Rav. I'll highlight the part of the brisa which is for Rav, and it will make sense with Rav Shita, but let's get started. I demarcate in my Gemara this with a red marker, everything that's Tanaim and everything in blue that's Amoraim, just so I can have like a 3 division. So this is like 8 lines of red here. So it says, Tanya Kavase de Rav, someone is walking on their path and it's getting dark out. And he recognizes a tree or a fence, just like our Mishnah. That makes perfect sense. So that's not a chiddush yet because everyone seems to agree with that. If you say I want it to be in a specific place, then you can walk until that place. Once you get there, then from there, if it's a city, you get the whole city, and then 2,000 amos in extension from wherever the limits are of that place. When is this true? If it's a very specified place. It's a very specific place. The mountain over there, which people, is a very specific location, that would be totally fine. That's only true if its shear is from Dalet Amos until the base sign, until that large shear, which we spent a lot of time discussing a while ago. And similarly, Bika, if there's a valley, Shihya Muka Yud, Vihimi Dalet Amos Vad Beis Asayim, same din in those places. Here, we're coming up on our din right here. Aval, B'makom she'ein mesuyam. What about a place that's unspecified, namely an oversized tree, right? What about a place that's unspecified? What does the Gemara say? Ein lo ela dalet amos. Now we see a brisa just like Rav. Our Mishnah said, lo amar klum kol iker. You get nothing. You get nothing. That tree is a 0 to you. It doesn't even help you. 0 dalet amos. So that's where the proof is here. We're still going to finish the brisa. Hayushnayim. Let's say that there were two people traveling together, and I know the neighborhood and you don't, or vice versa. Echad makir ve'echad she'eno makir. I've never been here before. I'm in your hometown. Zeh she'eno makir. I who don't know the town. Moser shvisaso lemakir. So if you know the neighborhood, I can say, I'm just being pulled by you. I'm on your coattails. Whatever you do, I do. And then, Behamakir Omer Shvisasi Bimakom Ploni, that works. That works, that I can follow you even if I don't know what I'm talking about. But Medvar Mamurim, when it's a Juk Shasim, Dalet Amos Shekava, in a very clear space where it says, I want these Dalet Amos, Aval Lo Sim Dalet Amos, Shekava, Lo Yazuz Mimakomo. This is the lengthy Mishnah, Bryce, that supports Rav, where we see that if it's a place that's not Mesuya, and I'll just read the line again. That line is exactly halfway down on the page and supports Rav Shita. So then says the
2 people share the same dalet amos?
Nope, that's not what it means. It means that if you and I are walking together and you recognize the town and I don't, and there's like a little bump in the ground, a significant one that you know about well, you say, Phil, I got this. We're going to be Kona Shvisa on that Makom Dalet Amos. Okay. Oh, that's great. Then you and I together have 2,000 Amos from there. It means I can, even though I don't know the space, but I can go with your knowledge. It's a chiddush. Because I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't live there. But you do. So if you know and we're walking together, we're friends. That's good enough. That works perfectly fine. So says the Gemara, this is a really good brisa. It's very clear that if your makom is not mesuyim, you get dalet amos. So says the Gemara, lema tabi tiyufta d'shmuel. If you have such a clear mari makom, Rav, a brisa no less, that says that you only get dalet amos when it's not mesuyim, when it's not a specified place, how does Shmuel get out of that? So answers the Gemara, Amar lach Shmuel with the nukimta. Hacha b'mai askinan kigon deika mimakom ragla ve'ad ikaro tre alfe ve'arba garmide. You are 2,004 amos away from that location. That's where all of this takes place. De'imuk misle be'idach gisa de'ilan kamle levar mitchuma. That on the other side of that tree, right at the other side, you're outside of your 2,000 amos. Isiyim dalet amos matzi azil, and if you could specify the dalet amos, you're fine. and that's why he says 2,000 amos. Ve'ilo lo matzi azil. And if you're not able, then you're not allowed to walk. So that's how he makes an okimta. He says that case is a unique case, 2,004 amos away from the location. What's Shmuel's brisa? So Rav just gave a brisa. Well, I mean, a brisa was quoted on behalf of Rav, and then a good one, and then Shmuel got out of it. And then Rav, and now Shmuel has a brisa. So Tanya Kavasi to Shmuel, about 7 lines from the bottom of the page on Nunam and Beis. Tanya Kavasi to Shmuel, Ta'av Irev, Ta'av Irev l'shtei ruchos. A person made a mistake and he put it up to Eruvin, one to the east and one to the west. Kimedumehu sheme arvin l'shtei ruchos. It seems to work. Osha Amar le'avadav tz'ubi eruvuli. He says to a couple of servants, please go make me an eruv. Echad irev alav l'tzafon, ve'echad irev alav l'darom. Mehalech l'tzafon ke'eruv l'darom, u'l'darom ke'eruv l'tzafon. You seem to be allowed to use both of them. V'imitzu alav es hatchum. What if it was built literally right around you? So namely, where I am right now, I'm in the middle of my page. So they put up one eruv exactly 2,000 amos to my left where I stand, my house, and 2,000 amos to the right, similar cases. So there says the Gemara, Imitzu alav es hatchum lo yazuz mimakom. What we see from here is that he holds that if you put up these eruvin, that you get the 2,000 amos. And now that's how Rav gets his shita. We have a very specific place. You put the eruv on the west end, on the north end, on the side, wherever you put it. So that's the right. Says the Gemara. What about Rav? If Shmuel has such a good brisa, then we should throw the question back to Rav. Leima tehave tiyuvte de Rav, and then the ace up the sleeve that the Gemara uses for Rav a number of times throughout Shas. Rav tanahu upalig. Rav gets out of this problem by just being a tana. Now he's not.
It's in the east and the west. I understand that case.
The point of this brisa is that what?
I understand that.
The point of this brisa is to show that if you have a very specific location for your eruv, that you're allowed to rely on it, and that's what Shmuel needed in order to say that.
He has to pick one of the one.
In this case, you can use both of them. We don't paskin that way, but that is what is happening in this brisa. We don't allow for that. We learned that earlier, but Shmuel was clearly of the opinion that was permissible based on this brisa. But Ladina, we don't do that. Ladina, that would trap us. That would be the Chamar Gamal case. So just, and I've said this before, but Rab was in a very unique phase. There were only a very few people in history who were in this category of what was called the Dor HaMa'avar, which was a number of Amoraim that transferred from the period of the Tanaim into the Amoraim. And for a lot of them, they were given this phrase of Tanahu Upali, that they can both function as an Amora, and when needed, they can also function as a Tana. And this is one of the times where Rav functioned both as a Tana and an Amora. He functioned as an Amora to fight with Shmuel, but he functioned as a Tana. Shmuel's like, oh, what about my price? He's like, sorry, I'm a Tana. There's nothing you can do about that. So that's Rav pulled the ace out of this. Well, he did, but the Gemara did. All right. And then the next case of our Mishnah, which is quoted in full here at the bottom 2 lines, the next case of our Mishnah is, what if I was Kona Shvisa? What if I looked 2,000 amos out and I said, I don't want to be under the tree at random. I want to be standing right next to the trunk. Does that work? So it says the Gemara, quoting our Mishnah in full, Amar Shvisa, 2 lines from the bottom, Amar Shvisasi bi'ikaro, if I look less than 2,000 amos out and I see a tree that I know about, and I say, I want to be standing by that tree trunk, that's mutter to be kona shvisa from a distance. I'm allowed to go there, and from that tree I can also go home as long as each one is just less than 2,000 amos. Nimtza. It seems to be that you're able to then walk approximately 4,000 amos, just shy of 4,000 amos, even once it's dark. Says the Gemara, a fascinating qualification. Amar Rava, this is only true that if you were rahit, if you were running to that ikar, you'd have to get there before the sun sets. So you got it, right? It's your own speed. What if you're a slow runner? What if you have a bad leg? How do we judge these? We have to get into the Rishonim on these things, but it has to be at least theoretically. You don't have to do it. But otherwise, because then you'll be there before Shkia. Then, of course, you're going to Shvisa there. Obviously, you're looking out. You're saying, I don't want to run there. It's going to take me, let's say, 2,000 amos is 3/5 of a mile approximately. So that's it.
I was saying that everything we talk about in the Mishnah of having knowledge of the scene only means if it's...
What say that again?
Everything we talk about in the Mishnah of having knowledge of the place and seeing the place is only if you could reach there before dark.
That's correct. But the Gemara has a hard time with this because the Gemara says v'chashcha. So that's the Gemara's question there. So Rabbi gives this parameter that you have to be able to run there before the sun sets. So let's say 3/5 of a mile. Let's say that you could run there in 5 minutes, theoretically at least. And your 5 minutes, your 2,000 amos, that's perfect. That's fine. If in theory you could run there, you have to know yourself a little bit, right? But really, can you run like the fastest guy in the world? Who's our standard? Og Melech HaBashan, like we saw in the Gemara the other day. Do we go relative scale? Do we go objective scale? Good question. So the Gemara says that Rabbi says it must be that when you can't be 30 seconds before Shkia and go, hey, I see a tree. That doesn't work. It has to be with enough time in theory to get there. Amar le Abaye, but you and I read the same Mishnah. The Mishnah says it got dark already. Says the Gemara, it would only have gotten dark by the time you get to your house, which was step 2. First is get to the tree, and from your tree you have to get to the house. So when the Mishnah says v'chashchalo, it means that by the time you get home it's going to be dark, but not the tree. The tree you have to get to before it gets dark. So that's answer number 1 to the question of, hey, the Mishnah says it's dark. Here's another approach. Amar Rava chashchalo ki maske kale kale. It would get dark if you were maske, if you went kale kale, if you went very slowly. Aval rahit mahi mati. But had you run, you would have made it there. These are kind of 2 versions. They're slightly different, I guess. But the point is that according to Rava, you need to be able to get there at least in theory by running before the sun would set. You don't actually have to do it. Rabbi v'Rav Yosef, havaka'azli be'orcha, they were traveling. Amar Rabbi l'Rav Yosef, tehei shvisosenu, tusei dikla desavil achva. I want our shvisa to be under the tree that supports its other trees. Achva, its brothers, that supports, it was a tree that kind of had a curvature to it or whatever. It was set up in a way where it was holding up some of the other trees. Sometimes we see trees entangled like that. So he says that's what he wanted. The Amrei, some say it wasn't that tree, but rather, to say dikla de parik mare mikarga. It was the tree, I want to be under the tree that exempts its master from paying taxes, namely that it has a lot of fruits. So when the tax collector comes, he shakes the tree, a whole bunch of fruit. Here you go. You're kind of greasing the pockets a little bit. Just take whatever you need. And that, either way. Amarle, lo yadanle. I don't know what tree you're talking about. Says the Gemara, Amarle, smochalai. We saw this already. You can rely on me. Titania, like the Brisa says. Notice here we didn't have this before. Reb Yossi Omer. We didn't have this in the Brisa that we quoted before in the name for the sake of Rab. Im hayu shnayim, if there were 2 people, echad makir ve'echad she'eno makir. I don't know the lay of the land, but you do. Zeh she'eno makir. Me, I don't know anything. So then, moser shvisaso lemakir. Then the guy who knows what's going on, I can just ride on his coattails. Zeh she'makir omer te shvisasenu b'makom ploni. Perfect. We have a brisa to support. And this is the din. That if I don't know the landscape and you do, and you know a place where we can be Konesh Visa within 2,000 amos and adding in Rava so that I can get there before Shkia, if in theory I was running, good, wonderful. Says the Gemara, Velohi. What does Velohi mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi, Dibra Hamaschel Velohi. It's 2 inches up from where we are, about 12 lines down from the top of the page. Velohi. Hada Amar Le Mishmei de Rabbi Yossi Lesa. It is not in the name of Rabbi Yossi. It was only just like we had it earlier. When this brisa was quoted to support Rab, that's the right text of the brisa. So why did you add in Rabbi Yossi? Says the Gemara, Velohi lo tanale ki Rabbi Yossi elaki hechi delikbel la mine mishum Rabbi Yossi nimuko imo. He lied. He said, I said it in the name of Rabbi Yossi so you'd be gores me. This is quoted in the Magen Avram. This Gemara is quoted Ladina, that if you have a psak, and you know the only way that they will, and you know you're right, you can't think you're wrong, you have to know that you're right. If the only way they'll listen to you is to say, I heard it from the Dayan, it's mutter. There are other Gemaras that are associated with this. If you want a beautiful summary of the Shitas, look in the bottom of the Mesifta. They have a beautiful sikum, a beautiful summary on when it's permissible to lie under these circumstances, but this is quoted in Shulchan Aruch Ladina in the Magen Avram. I believe it's in Kuf Nun Vav, Orchaim Kuf Nun Vav. Says the Gemara, almost halfway down, Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, Im Eino Makir O She'eino Baki. We also said in our Mishnah, let's say someone doesn't have a space that he recognizes, or he doesn't know the din that he should have said Shvisasi Bi'ikaro. So what did he do in the Mishnah? He said, I want to be Kona Shvisa right here. That was the case in our Mishnah. So says the Gemara, Hani Alpayim Ama Heichak Sivan. Where did all of this come from? We've been talking about 2,000 amos for like 50 blot. It's a lot. This is the Mari Makom for 2,000 amos. Where does it come from? So you can thank the Gemara for doing it this way instead of the long way. The Gemara is going to quote a 6-part Gzeira Shava only by the headers. You're welcome to read at length in Rashi all of the details if you so desire. Says the Gemara as follows: the Tanya. Here's the brisa. Shuish tachta. We want to sit underneath them. Elu arba amos. That's a Mari Makom for arba amos. Al yetze ish mimakomo. Here we go. Elu alpaim ama. This is the brisa, which is the source for 2,000 amos, the number that we use everywhere throughout Eruvin and in many other places in Shas as well. Says the Gemara, Minalan. What's the lumdus behind the brisa? You gave me a Mar Makom, I'm glad. But how did the brisa get to this point? How does the brisa know that it's 2,000 amos? So it says the Gemara, Amar Chizda, Lamadnu Makom mi Makom, Gzeir Shava number 1, Umakom mi Nisa, Gzeir Shava number 2, the Nisa mi Nisa, Gzeir Shava number 3, the Nisa mi Gvul, the Gvul mi Gvul, the Gvul mi Chutz, the Chutz mi Chutz, the Chsiv umadosem Chutz la'ir es pe'as kedma alpayim be'ama. All based on that pasuk Gzeira Shava many times over to get us back to the brisa, which then supports the idea of 2,000 amos. Says the Gemara, I mean, I got you. It's a pretty long trip to get the 2,000 amos from here to there, and Gzeira Shavas are complicated to start with sometimes. The Neilaf, first of the longest lines, 2/3 of the way down, and Aleph and Aleph. The Neilaf mikir ha'ir b'chutza elef ama. Well, why did you pick? I mean, there's just other psukim. Like, why did you have to do that route? Says the Gemara, because there we are done in chutz michutz. In the Gzeira Shava that we use, we needed the Gzeira Shava to be chutz michutz. But the pasuk that we just quoted, the last word on the first long line, they done in chutz michutza. It doesn't line up. Says the Gemara, what do you mean it doesn't line up? One letter off? I'm going to give you an example where the words weren't even the same. Says the Gemara, my nafkamina, hatana debe Rabbi Shmuel. The Shava Kohen, Uvaha Kohen, Zohi Shiva, Zohi Bia. We did Gzeira Shava with the words Shav and Bo. What are you worried about the letter Hey on Chutza? That's not a good argument. Says the Gemara, it's a very good argument. 2/3 of the way down. Hani Mili, this Gzeira Shava of Vishav HaKohen and Uvaha Kohen, that's Heicha Delei Kamidi de Damila. That's when you don't have a choice. And Chazal, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu, set up a structure where there's no option to learn what we need to learn except from here. Aval, because in the 6-part Gzeira Shava that we have, there was a way to do it without deviating even by one letter. Then we're going to learn out from the one that's most similar. So that's how the Gemara concludes, and this is our Mari Makom, this Bryson Pasuk of 2,000 amos. We're going to go a little bit more till the end of the page. Alpaim Ama Agulos. We said that there's a shita in our Mishnah that the 2,000 amos are agul, that they were round. Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus Manavshach. I don't understand your shita. How in the world did you come up with a circle? Where did we learn this from? We learned it from the world of the pasuk says. Let me just read the pasuk inside. The pasuk says in Shemos. Oh, this was talking about Umadosem chutz la'ir paskema alpaim be'ama. So this was talking about the Ari Mikla. It's talking about a particular space. So it says the Gemara, I don't understand your shita. If you agree with my Gzeira Shava, this is what was quoted by Rabbi. If you agree with the Gzeira Shava that we learned from where we learned from, it wasn't a circle over there, it was a square. It was 2,000 square amos. Then I don't understand why you're talking circles. Any less like Gzeira Shava, and if you don't follow the Gzeira Shava, then Alpayim Ama Minale. Then where did you get 2,000 amos from? So either you agree with us and it should be square and not circle, or you don't have 2,000 amos, because we came up with a sophisticated approach to 2,000 amos. Says Gemara, no. La'olam isla Gzeira Shava. Really, Reb Chanina ben Antigonus does hold of the Gzeira Shava. The shiny hacha, here it is different. Because the Amar Kra Ze Yelahem Migreshe He'arim, these will be the spaces of the land. Lazeh Atanosein Peos, you give corners to that space. V'i'ata Nosein Peos Lashovse Shabbos. So says the Gemara, Rav Chanina ben Antigonus was of the opinion that the square didn't apply here. It doesn't apply by Shabbos. It only applies by the Migreshe Arim, by the land delineations. Says the Gemara, V'Rabbanan, very good argument. What would the rabbis who say that we do have a square, what would they say about this drasha? Because the drasha seems that we're only allowed to have a circle when it's Shabbos related. Says the Gemara, Tani lachananya omer kazeh yehu kol shovsei Shabbos. No. You got the quotation wrong. It doesn't exclude Shabbos. It includes Shabbos. That the square is just like Shabbos. So therefore, the Rabbanan argue with Rav Chanina ben Antigonus. They hold that it's 2,000 square amos. We pointed out the math last time, and we're going to discuss this a little bit more today. That if you have a perfect square, so then that perfect square, you get the hypotenuse of the square, the length corner to corner, which is significantly longer. So that's going to be. We'll come back to that math in a moment. So that's how the Rabbanan answer this question. Now, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Hamavir dalat amos b'reshus harabim, eino chayev ad shemavir hein v'alach sonan. The only time you're ever going to be chayev dalat amos in a reshus harabim is when you carry dalat amos plus what would have been the corner to corner. So let's say that this is my square. I know it's not a square, but let's assume that it was. And this is a unit of 4. So then this angle is 5.6, which means that in order to violate the Isser Darais of Dalat Amos B'Reshus Harabim, it's not Dalat Amos. It's 5.6 amos. It's because that's what the angle would be. If that's the math is x times the square root of 2. If you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, it's a square basically. So then the angle is times 1.4. The side would be 4. When you multiply times 1.4, that's 5.6. No Isser Doraisa until you've walked 5.6 amos with an. We've been talking about Dalat Amos almost after. It's not correct. Midrabanan, it's correct for sure. Midoraisa, it's not true, says the Gemara in the name of who said this? This is Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa Vadiklan Rabba. They were testing in Shir. Here's what happened. Amod Bershus Harabim Gvoa Yud Verochav Dalet Tzarach Hein Va'alach Sonan Olo. Do you include the angle or do you not? The Amrinam Le Lav Hainu the Rav Chananya. Didn't we already learn this? Titania Rav Chananya Omer Kazeh Yehu Kol Shovsei Shabbos. It should be the same. What does that mean? It means that it's a square. It means that it's a square. That was the raya that we were going to be using a square. Kol Shovsei Shabbos. And that is in fact the din. That Midoraisa, we are not going to violate the Isser Shabbos ever, hopefully, of carrying. But if one were to ever be punishable by the capital crime of violating Shabbos, it would only be if you did Dalet Amos with the hypotenuse. So it would be 5.6 amos instead of the classical 4. We'll stop right here, picking up again tomorrow night with another blot and a half. Have a great night, everybody.